Blood streaked across the sky as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the small frontier town of Redemption Creek in crimson hues that matched the stains on Sophia O'Malley's worn cotton dress. Her hands trembled as she pounded on the doctor's door for the third time, her brother's labored breathing growing more shallow with each passing second. It was 1876, and the promise of gold and opportunity had lured Sophia and her younger brother Thomas westward after their parents' death left them with nothing but debts and painful memories in Boston. Now, as dust swirled around her boots and panic clawed at her throat, that dream of a better life seemed to be slipping through her fingers like water. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking as she knocked again. "Please help us." The doors swung open to reveal Dr. Edwin Wallace, his spectacles perched on his nose and his white hair disheveled. His eyes narrowed when he saw who stood on his porch. "Miss O'Malley," he said, glancing at Thomas's pale face. "Bring him in." Sophia struggled to help her brother through the doorway. At 22, Thomas had always been strong and healthy, working odd jobs around town since they'd arrived 3 months ago. But the mining accident 2 days prior had left him with a deep gash in his side that had festered despite Sophia's careful cleaning. Dr. Wallace directed her to lay Thomas on the examination table. The small room smelled of carbolic acid and medicinal herbs. Glass bottles lined wooden shelves, their contents promising healing that Sophia couldn't afford. "He's burning up," the doctor said, pressing his palm to Thomas's forehead. He cut away the makeshift bandage Sophia had applied and frowned at the angry red wound beneath. "This infection is severe. Why didn't you bring him in sooner?" Sophia swallowed hard. "We thought it would heal on its own. We couldn't." She looked down at her threadbare dress, embarrassment coloring her cheeks. "We don't have much money, sir." Dr. Wallace worked quickly, cleaning the wound and preparing medicines. "He needs surgery to clean this properly, then medication. The infection's spreading rapidly." Thomas moaned, his eyes fluttering open briefly before closing again. "Do whatever you must," Sophia said, gripping her brother's hand. "He's all I have left." The doctor nodded grimly. "I'll need to operate immediately. Wait outside." The next 2 hours stretched like an eternity, as Sophia paced the small waiting area. Night had fully descended, and lamplight cast long shadows across the wooden floor. She prayed silently, bargaining with God and promising anything if Thomas would just survive. When Dr. Wallace finally emerged, wiping his hands on a cloth, his expression was unreadable. "I've removed the infected tissue and cleaned the wound thoroughly," he said. "He's young and strong, which works in his favor, but he'll need careful monitoring and medication." Relief flooded through Sophia. "Thank you, doctor. Thank you so much. He'll need to stay here tonight," Dr. Wallace continued. "And you'll need to purchase these medicines." He handed her a list. "That'll be $5 for the surgery, and another $3 for the medicines." The relief drained away, replaced by cold dread. $8 might as well have been 800. She had less than $1 to her name after spending their savings on food and rent. I don't have that much," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "But I can work. I can clean your office, do laundry, anything." "Please!" Dr. Wallace's face hardened. "Miss O'Malley, I run a business, not a charity. I've provided care to you and your brother twice before without receiving proper payment. I know, and I'm grateful, but I cannot continue to provide services without compensation," he interrupted. "The medicines alone cost me money. If you cannot pay, I cannot provide them." Tears welled in Sophia's eyes. "He'll die without them. Then I suggest you find the money quickly." His voice softened slightly. "I'm sorry, but I have my own family to feed." Sophia stood frozen, desperation crushing her chest. $8. She needed $8 or Thomas would die. "How long can you keep him here?" she asked. "Until morning," Dr. Wallace replied. "After that, he needs those medicines." She nodded, determination replacing her despair. "I'll find a way. I promise." Stepping out into the cool night air, Sophia took a deep breath. The main street was quiet, most establishments closed except for the saloon at the far end, where raucous laughter and piano music spilled into the night. She had never set foot in such a place. A proper lady wouldn't, but desperation pushed her forward. The swinging doors of the Silver Dollar Saloon parted as she entered, and the noise dimmed momentarily as several pairs of eyes turned to look at her. The air was thick with tobacco smoke and the smell of whiskey. Men played cards at tables while others crowded around the bar. A few women in garish dresses circulated, laughing too loudly at whatever the men said. Sophia approached the bar, ignoring the stares. "What can I do for you, miss?" the bartender asked, raising an eyebrow. "I need work," she said simply. "Anything. Right now." He looked her over, from her worn boots to her simple dress and the loose auburn hair that had escaped her hasty bun. "We don't need no more girls. Got plenty already." "Please," she insisted. "My brother will die if I can't earn enough for his medicine." The bartender shook his head. "Sorry, miss. Try the hotel in the morning. They sometimes need help with cleaning. Morning would be too late." Sophia turned away, fighting back tears. As she moved toward the door, a commotion erupted at one of the card tables. "You're cheating, Caldwell," a burly man shouted, rising to his feet. The man across from him stood calmly, his face impassive beneath his hat. "Accusing a man of cheating is a serious matter, Jenkins. I suggest you reconsider." Sophia paused, watching the scene unfold. The man called Caldwell was tall and broad-shouldered, his dark hair just visible beneath his hat. Unlike the others, his clothes were clean and well-maintained, though not flashy. A gun hung at his hip, but he made no move toward it. "I know what I saw," Jenkins spat, his hand hovering near his own weapon. "Then you saw wrong," Caldwell replied evenly. "Take your money and leave before this gets ugly." The tension in the room was palpable. Several patrons moved away from the potential line of fire. Sophia found herself holding her breath. Jenkins cursed, then abruptly grabbed his remaining coins and stormed out, shouldering past Sophia roughly. The normal buzz of conversation slowly resumed. The man called Caldwell sat back down, collecting the cards and reshuffling them with practiced ease. His eyes, a startling shade of blue, flicked up and met Sophia's for just a moment before she hurried out the door. Outside, the night air felt even colder after the stuffy warmth of the saloon. Sophia wrapped her arms around herself, fighting despair. Where could she possibly find $8 before morning? She walked aimlessly, considering her options. She could try to sell her mother's silver locket, the only valuable thing she owned, but no shops would be open until morning. She could beg door to door, but most people in town were struggling themselves. Lost in thought, she didn't notice the man following her until his voice cut through the quiet night. "It's dangerous for a lady to wander alone after dark." Sophia whirled around, heart pounding, to find Caldwell standing a few paces behind her. Up close, she could see he was younger than she'd initially thought, perhaps 30, with a strong jaw shadowed by stubble, and those intense blue eyes that seemed to see right through her. "I'm Victor Caldwell," he said, tipping his hat slightly. "You seemed troubled in the saloon." "I'm fine," she said automatically, then bit her lip. She was far from fine. "I'm Sophia O'Malley." "What brings a woman like you to the Silver Dollar at this hour, Miss O'Malley?" She hesitated, then decided honesty was her only option. "My brother is at the doctor's. He was injured in the mine. The infection." Her voice caught. "I need $8 by morning for his care and medicine, or Dr. Wallace won't treat him further." Victor studied her face. "And you thought to earn it at the saloon?" "I thought to earn it anywhere I could," she replied, lifting her chin defiantly. "He's all I have." Something in Victor's expression shifted. "I see." He was quiet for a moment, then asked, "This brother of yours, what's his name?" "Thomas. He's 22. We came west after our parents died, looking for a fresh start." She wasn't sure why she was telling him this, but something about his steady gaze made her continue. He's a good man. Hard worker. This wasn't his fault. Victor nodded slowly. Wait here, he said, and before she could respond, he turned and walked back toward the saloon. Sophia stood uncertainly in the street, wondering if she should leave. She knew nothing about this man except his name, and that he'd nearly been in a gunfight minutes ago. But something told her to trust him, or perhaps it was just desperation. He returned moments later, his expression unreadable. Come with me, he said, walking past her toward the doctor's office. Mr. Caldwell? She questioned, hurrying to keep up with his long strides. Victor, he corrected. And I think we should see about your brother. They reached Dr. Wallace's office, and Victor knocked firmly. It took several minutes before the bleary-eyed doctor answered, clearly having been woken from sleep. What is it now? He demanded, then recognized Sophia. His expression hardened. Miss O'Malley, I told you, how is the young man? Victor interrupted, his voice quiet but commanding. Dr. Wallace straightened slightly. Mr. Caldwell. I didn't realize you were acquainted with Miss O'Malley. Thomas O'Malley? Victor continued as if the doctor hadn't spoken. Is his condition stable? For now, Dr. Wallace admitted. But without proper medication, the infection will spread. I've explained to Miss O'Malley. Victor reached into his pocket and withdrew a small leather pouch. The soft clink of coins filled the silence as he placed it in the doctor's hand. This should cover his treatment and any medicines he needs. I expect him to receive the best care you can provide. Dr. Wallace weighed the pouch, his eyebrows rising slightly. This is more than keep it, Victor said. He turned to Sophia, whose mouth had fallen open in shock. Can I see him? She nodded mutely, leading the way into the small room where Thomas lay. Her brother's face was pale, his breathing shallow but steady. A clean bandage wrapped his torso, stark white against his skin. Victor stood quietly beside the bed, studying the young man's face. He has your eyes, he observed. Our mother's eyes, Sophia corrected softly. She looked up at Victor, overwhelmed. Why are you doing this? He didn't answer immediately, still looking at Thomas. I had a younger brother once, he finally said. James. He got a similar infection after a hunting accident. We were far from town. He trailed off, and Sophia understood the rest without him saying it. I'm sorry, she whispered. Victor turned to her, his expression softening. Your life matters to me, he said simply. Both of your lives. The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning Sophia couldn't fully grasp. Before she could respond, Dr. Wallace entered with a tray of medicines. He'll need to take these every 4 hours, the doctor explained, setting down vials of liquid and packets of powder. And the bandage should be changed twice daily. He can return home tomorrow if his fever breaks, but he'll need rest for at least a week. Sophia nodded, absorbing the instructions. Thank you, doctor. Dr. Wallace glanced at Victor, then back to Sophia. I'll check on him again before dawn, he said, and left them alone. You should rest, Victor told her, nodding toward a chair in the corner. I'll stay for a while. You don't have to, I know, he interrupted gently. I want to. Too exhausted to argue, Sophia sank into the chair, watching as Victor pulled another chair to Thomas's bedside. The events of the night caught up with her, and despite her intention to stay awake, she drifted into sleep. She woke to sunlight streaming through the window, and the sound of low voices. Thomas was awake, propped up slightly on pillows, talking quietly with Victor. Her brother looked pale but alert, his eyes clear of the fever haze that had frightened her so badly. Sophia, Thomas said, noticing she was awake. Mr. Caldwell was just telling me about his cattle ranch outside of town. She straightened, smoothing her wrinkled dress. Good morning, she said, moving to Thomas's side. How are you feeling? Like I've been trampled by a herd of buffalo, he admitted with a weak smile. But better than yesterday. The fever broke during the night, Victor explained, standing. Dr. Wallace came by at dawn and said he's responding well to the medicine. Relief washed over Sophia. She placed a hand on Thomas's forehead, confirming his coolness herself. Thank God. And Mr. Caldwell? Thomas added. He told me what he did. Sophia met Victor's eyes. Yes, she agreed softly. Thank you doesn't seem adequate. No thanks necessary, Victor replied. Dr. Wallace says he can go home this afternoon if he continues to improve. I have some business in town, but I'll return with a wagon to help transport him. Before she could protest, he tipped his hat and left, his boots echoing on the wooden floor. Thomas watched him go, then turned to his sister. He stayed all night, Sophia. Pulled that chair up and kept watch like we were family. He said he lost his brother to an infection, she explained, pouring water for Thomas. I think he sees something of himself in you. Thomas sipped the water gratefully. He's not what I expected from a cattle rancher. He knows medicine, literature. We discussed Shakespeare before you woke. Sophia raised an eyebrow. Shakespeare? At dawn in a doctor's office? He saw the book I keep in my jacket, Thomas explained. Said his mother was a schoolteacher back east. Made him read the classics even on the frontier. Throughout the day, Thomas grew stronger, and by afternoon, he was able to sit up properly and eat a light meal. Dr. Wallace declared him well enough to return home but insisted on strict rest for at least a week. True to his word, Victor returned with a wagon, its bed lined with clean blankets to cushion the ride. With gentle efficiency, he helped Thomas from the doctor's office and settled him in the wagon. Our boarding house is on Pine Street, Sophia said, climbing up to sit beside her brother. I know, Victor replied, taking the reins. Mrs. Peterson's place, isn't it? Sophia nodded, surprised. How did you know? It's a small town, he said simply, urging the horses forward. The ride was mercifully short, and soon Thomas was settled in their small room at the boarding house. Mrs. Peterson fussed over him, bringing extra pillows and promising soup for dinner. As Victor prepared to leave, Sophia followed him outside to the wagon. I don't know how to repay you, she said earnestly. But I will, somehow. Victor shook his head. There's no debt between us, Miss O'Malley. Sophia, she corrected. And there is. I won't forget what you did. He studied her face for a moment, then said, Have dinner with me tomorrow evening. Nothing fancy, just a meal at the hotel restaurant. The invitation surprised her. I shouldn't leave Thomas alone. Mrs. Peterson will look after him for an hour, Victor said. And it's not repayment. It's just dinner. Sophia hesitated, then nodded. All right. Thank you. He smiled then, a genuine smile that transformed his serious face and made him look younger. Until tomorrow, then. The next day passed in a blur of caring for Thomas, who insisted he was feeling better by the hour despite Sophia's instructions to rest. By evening, she was convinced he would be fine for an hour or two, especially with Mrs. Peterson checking in on him. She wore her best dress, a simple blue cotton that had seen better days but was still presentable. She pinned her auburn hair up neatly and borrowed a drop of Mrs. Peterson's lavender water. You look beautiful, Thomas said from his bed. Like Mother on Sundays. Sophia smiled, touching the locket at her throat. Don't overexert yourself while I'm gone. Promise me. I promise, he said solemnly, then grinned. Besides, Mrs. Peterson threatened to tie me to the bed if I tried to stand. Victor was waiting outside the boarding house, dressed in a clean shirt and vest, his usual hat absent. He looked different without it, more approachable somehow. You look lovely, he said, offering his arm. The hotel restaurant was modest but the nicest establishment in Redemption Creek. White tablecloths covered the tables, and actual glass lanterns provided warm light. Several diners looked up as they entered, curious about the new pair. Over a simple but well-prepared meal of roast beef and potatoes, Sophia learned more about Victor Caldwell. He'd come west 10 years ago at 20, working as a ranch hand before saving enough to buy his own small spread 5 miles outside of town. He now ran a modest but successful cattle operation with 4 hired hands. And you play cards in the Silver Dollar? Sophia added, taking a sip of water. Victor's mouth quirked. Occasionally. It's a good way to hear news and keep track of what's happening in town. And to win money from men like Jenkins? He laughed softly. That's just a side benefit. Were you really cheating? She asked boldly. No, he replied without hesitation. I've never needed to. Jenkins is just a poor loser. As they talked, Sophia found herself relaxing in his company. There was something steady about Victor, a quiet confidence that didn't need to announce itself. What about you? He asked as they shared an apple pie for dessert. What brought you and Thomas all the way from Boston? Dreams of a better life, she admitted. Our parents died within months of each other, mother of influenza, father of what I think was a broken heart. They left debts, and the bank took our home. Thomas heard about the mining opportunities out west, so we scraped together enough for train tickets and came here. And has it been better? Victor asked, watching her closely. Sophia considered the question. Different, she finally said. Harder in some ways. But there's a freedom here I never had in Boston. No one cares about your family name or who your grandfather was. They care if you work hard and keep your word. That's what I love about this place, Victor agreed. A person can build something that's truly their own. As they walked back to the boarding house under a canopy of stars, Sophia felt a strange reluctance for the evening to end. Victor seemed to feel the same, slowing his pace as they approached her door. Thank you for dinner, she said, turning to face him. My pleasure, he replied. In the moonlight, his eyes were darker, almost midnight blue. I'd like to check on Thomas tomorrow, if that's all right. I have some books he might enjoy while he's recovering. He'd like that, Sophia said, smiling. He's already bored with lying in bed. Victor nodded, then hesitated before saying, Good night, Sophia. Good night, Victor. Over the next 2 weeks, Victor became a regular visitor at the boarding house. He brought books for Thomas, and sometimes small treats, fresh bread from the bakery or apples from his own trees. As Thomas regained his strength, the 3 of them would play cards or checkers in the evenings. Sophia found herself looking forward to Victor's visits more than she cared to admit. There was something about his quiet presence that made her feel safe and valued in a way she hadn't since her parents died. When Thomas was finally well enough to move around freely, Victor surprised them both with an invitation. I'd like you to visit my ranch this Saturday, he said one evening as they finished a game of checkers. Nothing formal, just dinner and a chance to see the place. I thought Thomas might enjoy the fresh air after being cooped up for so long. Thomas's face lit up. I'd like that very much. Sophia nodded her agreement, curious to see where Victor lived. Saturday dawned clear and warm for early autumn. Victor arrived with his wagon mid-morning, and they set off for his ranch. As they left town behind, the landscape opened up into rolling grasslands dotted with wildflowers and the occasional stand of trees. It's beautiful, Sophia said, taking in the vast sky and distant mountains. Wait until you see the ranch, Thomas replied excitedly from beside her. Victor says you can see all the way to the river valley from his front porch. Victor smiled at Thomas's enthusiasm. It's not much compared to some of the big operations further south, but it's mine. When they crested a small hill, Sophia saw the ranch spread out below them. A neat white farmhouse stood surrounded by several outbuildings and corrals. A small herd of cattle grazed in a nearby pasture, and smoke rose lazily from the chimney. Welcome to Riverstone Ranch, Victor said, a note of pride in his voice. As they approached, a man emerged from one of the barns, waving in greeting. That's Ellis, my foreman, Victor explained. The other hands are probably out checking the north pasture. Ellis tipped his hat as Victor brought the wagon to a stop. Afternoon, boss. Got everything ready like you asked? Thank you, Ellis, Victor replied. This is Miss Sophia O'Malley and her brother Thomas. Madam, sir, Ellis said politely. Heard a lot about you both. Sophia glanced at Victor, who suddenly seemed very interested in unhitching the horses. The house was modest but comfortable, with solid furniture and clean, bright rooms. What struck Sophia most was how empty it felt, not unlived in, but lacking the small touches that made a house a home. It's not much, Victor said, noticing her looking around. I'm not here as often as I'd like, with business in town and riding the range. It's lovely, she assured him. Just needs a woman's touch. The words slipped out before she could stop them, and she felt her cheeks grow warm. Victor's eyes met hers, something unspoken passing between them. Yes, he agreed quietly. It does. The day passed pleasantly, with Victor showing them around the property. Thomas was fascinated by everything, asking endless questions about the cattle operation and life on a ranch. By the time they sat down to dinner, a hearty beef stew prepared by Mrs. Winters, who came in from town twice a week to cook and clean, Sophia felt more relaxed than she had in months. After dinner, Victor suggested they watch the sunset from the porch. Thomas, tired from the day's activities, opted to explore Victor's bookshelf instead, leaving Sophia and Victor alone as the sky blazed with color. I can see why you love it here, Sophia said, leaning against the porch railing. It feels like the rest of the world doesn't exist. That's part of the appeal, Victor admitted, standing close beside her. But it can be lonely sometimes. She turned to look at him, finding his eyes already on her face. Is that why you spend so much time in town? Partly, he said. Though recently, I've had a better reason to visit. The implication was clear, and Sophia felt her heart quicken. Victor, I'm not a man who speaks easily about feelings, he said, his voice low and earnest. But these past weeks, getting to know you and Thomas, I've felt something I never expected to feel. Sophia swallowed, her throat suddenly dry. What's that? Hope, he said simply. A sense that maybe my life doesn't have to be just work and solitude. That maybe there could be more. Before she could respond, he reached out and gently took her hand. I know it's soon. We've only known each other a short time. But I feel like I've been waiting for you without knowing it. Sophia looked down at their joined hands, then back up at his face. In the fading light, his expression was open and vulnerable in a way she hadn't seen before. That night at the doctor's office, she said softly, when you said our lives mattered to you, I didn't understand then what you meant. I didn't fully understand it myself, Victor admitted. I just knew I couldn't walk away. She stepped closer to him, drawn by the warmth in his eyes. I'm glad you didn't. With gentle deliberation, Victor leaned down and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was soft and questioning at first, then deepened as Sophia responded, her hand coming up to rest against his chest. When they broke apart, Victor rested his forehead against hers. I think I'm falling in love with you, Sophia O'Malley. Her heart soared at the words. I think I'm falling in love with you too, Victor Caldwell. The ranch looked different in the morning light as they prepared to return to town, brighter somehow, full of possibility. Thomas, who had tactfully retired early the previous night, seemed unsurprised by the new warmth between Sophia and Victor. About time, he muttered when Victor helped Sophia into the wagon, his touch lingering longer than necessary. Over the following months, life changed dramatically for the O'Malleys. Thomas, fully recovered, took a position as Victor's assistant on the ranch, showing a natural aptitude for the work. Sophia continued her sewing work in town but spent weekends at Riverstone, gradually adding those personal touches the house had lacked. By Christmas, Victor's proposal surprised no one, least of all Sophia, who accepted with tears of joy. They were married in the spring, with Thomas standing proudly as best man and the entire town in attendance. Your life matters to me, Victor whispered to her during their first dance as husband and wife. More than anything. Sophia smiled up at him, remembering that desperate night that had brought them together. And yours to me, she replied. Now and always. 5 years later, Riverstone Ranch had prospered and grown. The farmhouse, once sparse and lonely, now bustled with life. Thomas had his own cabin nearby and had become an indispensable partner in the ranch operations. Sophia had transformed the house into a true home, with curtains at the windows and flowers in the garden. And on the wide front porch where they had shared their first kiss, Sophia now sat in a rocking chair, their 3-year-old daughter Eleanor asleep in her lap and a new baby growing beneath her heart. Victor found them there as the sun began to set, returning from a day of work with Thomas. He paused at the sight, his face softening with love. "My girls," he said quietly, climbing the steps to join them. Sophia smiled up at him, her heart full. "Welcome home." He leaned down to kiss her, then gently stroked Eleanor's copper curls. "How was your day?" "Peaceful," she replied. "Eleanor helped me bake bread and chase chickens. The doctor came by to check on me and says the baby is growing well." Victor placed his hand over hers on her growing belly. "Another month or so?" She nodded. "He thinks so." Victor settled into the chair beside her, taking off his hat and running a hand through his hair, now lightly streaked with silver at the temples. "I was thinking about that night," he said after a moment. "The night we met. At the doctor's office?" Sophia asked, knowing exactly which night he meant. "Yes. I remember thinking how brave you were, ready to do anything to save your brother." He turned to look at her, his blue eyes as intense as ever. "I had no idea then that by helping you, I was saving my own life too." Sophia reached over to take his hand. "We saved each other," she said softly. As the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in the same crimson hues as the night they'd met, Sophia reflected on how a moment of desperation had led to a lifetime of love. The coins Victor had placed on Dr. Wallace's desk had purchased more than medicine. They had bought them time, a chance, a future together. And as Eleanor stirred in her lap and Victor squeezed her hand, Sophia knew without doubt that every life in their little family mattered more than all the gold in the West.